Here at the 2012 USA Pro Cycling Challenge, I'm here with Chris Horner from Radio Shack-Nissan. And Chris, you said you need to look at the book, but haven't you already figured all this stuff out?
No, I just got done doing 21 days of the Tour de France and looking at the book. Now everything looks the same. It's all like boop, boop, flat, boop, 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 and there. So yeah, I need to check out the profile still. Tomorrow's stage, the first stage, I know, of course, looks like it could be a smaller group, but I think it's still a sprint between at least 30, 70 guys or something. But certainly it will be, here at altitude, it should at least split up and lose a few guys here and there on the final climb.
You came off of Utah, which was an extremely hilly race. This race also has hilly. Explain to me the difference. Like, we have to go over Independence Pass, Cottonwood, I mean, super long climbs compared to some of the summit finishes we have, which are like 2.5 mile little kickers. How does that play different than what you've been doing before?
Believe it or not, I think Utah and here are completely different. Utah, you got shorter climbs but steeper climbs. Here you get a little more altitude but longer climbs. And so what we had, of course I know everyone's going to say, yeah, we had 9,000 feet. That the highest pass we went through at Utah was 9,000 feet, but here we're going 12,000 and a half. And so there's a big difference. There really is a limit where the body just doesn't like going that high. And so here in Colorado, we don't have the same steepness, but you're going to be on these climbs for 40 minutes to an hour. And of course, there in Utah, we're on those climbs for 20 minutes to 30 minutes.
Looking at stages 2, 4, and 6 are little summit finishes, 2.5 mile to 3 mile kickers.
Yeah.
You're coming into shape. You have a strong team. Do you think how is that going to affect everybody? How's that going to affect the race and those that are not used to altitude?
Well, those that aren't used to altitude going to get a great welcoming.
A lung-burning welcoming committee?
Exactly. It's not going to be pleasant. I mean, for me at Utah, I was last 5-6 days in Bend, and it's about 4,000 feet where my house is, just a little under. And then went to Utah, like I said, we were racing more or less at 6,000 to about 8,000 feet where most of the stage is. And I was suffering. And then I had 6 days maybe adjusting to it. The riders, the European riders coming over, the Americans coming from sea level, of course, they're not going to get that, and we're a little bit higher. So they're going to get a rude awakening, of course, on what altitude does to you. Because it really, if you look at Utah, we were on Snowbird Summit, the second to last stage there in Utah, where it was a summit finish. I was on Christian's wheel and Danielson's wheel and Peter Stetna's wheel, one of the three guys there at different points in times while going up that climb. But literally at the summit, we were doing 290 watts, when normally we'd be doing 375 to 450 watts. And so you're easily losing 7,500 watts of power when you get up at altitude. So it's going to be different for the guys coming from sea level. And that's where you see a lot of the Europeans, you see such good talent here, but then you wonder, they just came from the tour?
Are they on vacation?
Or did they come on vacation and now you're throwing them at altitude too? I mean, you got the 3 whammies there that's just going to knock anyone off of form. So you saw it last year when, of course, you had Cadell here, you had the Schleck brothers here, or I believe Andy was here. And so you look at how they performed, and they performed strongly, but they weren't dominant.
Right.
And so it's a big difference when you come in. It's going to be a shocker for them. Hopefully for me, I came from the Tour de France, the Olympics, but then again, like we said, I went to Bend, got me about 4,000 feet, went to Utah for a week. That brought me up to 6,000, 7,000 feet more or less. Came back to Bend at 4,000 for a week, and now I'm here. So hopefully I have some kind of adjustment to the altitude now.
Speaking of the altitude, you didn't get to do this race last year because of your injury. Did you learn anything from watching the race last year?
Well, I learned that it's an important race. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I didn't learn about seeing the course or seeing that, but I learned the size of the scale of the race with the fans and the spectators, how huge they are here in Colorado. Of course, I learned that our sponsors, RadioShack-Nissan-Trek, they all want good results here. And so what I learned out of watching last year was that it's important to arrive here in Colorado with some good shape. And so hopefully I can get hopefully had some kind of recovery since the tour and get here and ride with some good form.
If you're in good form, you're going to be a factor in all the climbs that we've been talking about. How big a time gaps do you feel are going to be at the end, and how critical is that last day's time trial? And you've talked about how your climbing has improved and your time trialing has suffered a bit. Will that be a factor?
It's always a factor all year for me, it seems like. I don't know exactly what happened to the time trialing skills. They seem to have disappeared this year. So I don't know if that's just age related. I don't know if it's weight related, if it's climbing related. I don't know exactly where it's gone, but it certainly hasn't been good. So it's a shorter TT here, the last stage. Hopefully 25 seconds, 30 seconds is what hopefully I don't need more than that, because it'd be hard to find here. And whenever you're in a weak stage race, to find more than 20 or 30 seconds in a stage race that's only a week long is next to impossible.
With these kind of profiles, do you think over the climbing days that you can actually get bigger gaps, or do you think it'll be relatively close by the last day?
It's always relatively close amongst the first, I'd say the first 3 or something, first 5 sometimes. Yeah. And here with the climbing, not as steep, but you got a couple good, like we talked about already, a couple 2K, 4K finishes, whatever it's going to be, those short explosive ones. You can definitely find 20 seconds there on the right crowd.
Flagstaff, do you know it?
I don't know it.
Have you heard about it?
I've heard all kinds of stuff about it, but I don't know it. And certainly would be nice to do it. And I've been racing a long time, like you know. I've been professional for 18 years, but we don't race in Colorado. Believe it or not, I did the Saturn Classic a couple times. I've done some cyclocross races in Boulder and stuff, but I haven't. There's not that much racing during my career as a professional cyclist that have been up here. Not important races anyway. Saturn Classic was the biggest one, of course, Coors Classic, but that ended right as my career was starting. So for me, there hasn't been much reason to come up to Colorado when there's so many other bigger ones around the country until now.
Now there's a big reason to be here.
Now there's a big reason. That's why we're here.
RadioShack-Nissan, you bring in some heavy hitters that are some of the favorites to be able to do well. Who is that responsibility falling on? Chris, it's on your legs today?
It's always on my legs with RadioShack-Nissan.
Jens is always the worker, and you are always the leader.
Yes. Well, it's so funny because in Utah, we go into the riders' meeting. I step up in the riders' meeting. They're like, Chris is the leader. And I say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the leader, but before I'm the leader, let me just ask anyone here. If you have the legs, if you think you can win here at Utah, stand up and say so now. Otherwise, if we miss a move, expect to be on the front working for me. But I don't guarantee my form's great. I just guarantee I'll be decent. And so I think the same as we arrive here in Colorado. I'm not certain where the legs are. I'm hoping that with the altitude, the week before Utah spent in Bend, the week of Utah there, another week back in Bend, and then of course here, hopefully now I've adjusted to the altitude. So I'm very optimistic.
So you would like to be able to be that leader and to be able to ride to the ability that you know that you're able to.
Absolutely. I would love to be the leader if I have the legs.
Right.
So hopefully, I know from Utah that the legs aren't 100%, but they're not far off. I just need a few extra watts here and there, and then all of a sudden I'm riding really good. So hopefully a little bit of recovery from Utah, a little more adjustment to the altitude, and I'll be good here. But you also look at the team, and with RadioShack-Nissan, we have Jens, who's, like I said, is going to be a great worker. But you have Boucher, who's coming off of being second at Utah, so he's riding great. We have Andreas Kloden, who took a week off of the Tour de France. Now he's been training. And so Andreas and I were out training earlier today before our conversation now, discussing that possibly his form could come really, really good here after a week off of the Tour, but maybe he still needs that other week or two to ride into it.
And with Kloden, he didn't just show up like yesterday. He's been here. He actually took some time to get ready.
Exactly. Kloden took a week off from the Tour, trained a week easy, then came here and he's been here for 7-8 days before Colorado started. So,
if you were to look at some of the other favorites, anybody stand out that you'd pick out to be able to try to do well here?
A lot of good favorites, absolutely. But remember, a lot of those favorites that names are going to come out, like Cadell, TJ, and those guys, they all came from the Tour too. So how much time did they take off in the Tour? So that's really the question. For me to actually say they're a favorite, I'd need to know their training. And so I haven't seen what TJ's been doing after the Olympics. I know he did the Tour, went to the Olympics, and he was solid at the Olympics. And so did he take a week off or 2 weeks off after the Olympics? He's coming here just for namesake and to help the team. Same thing with Cadell. You saw him come here last year, and he wasn't the top favorite, but he's still good. But BMC's got to have at least, when you look at their team, they got to be one of the favorites because they have the young kid who won in Utah. So with that, when you look at TJ and you look at Johan who won in Utah and you look at Cadell being here, you got to assume they're one of the favorites too. You look at RadioShack-Nissan, of course, there's myself and Clody and Boucher, who rode good, and of course we have Jakob here. Jakob said he took a week off after the Olympics though too. So again, hit and miss. Are you on form or are you not? This is a very difficult time to come into form right now after the Tour de France and Olympics.
So Levi Dombrowski.
Yep.
maybe
Yanni.
Nibali,
of course. Yeah, of course. Ivan Basso.
So can all these guys be a factor in this race, or it's just too hard to predict? You were just saying
it's too hard to predict. I wouldn't sit here right now and be like, this is the guy that's going to win. Too hard to predict. I certainly wouldn't say it's going to be Levi. I wouldn't say it's going to be myself. I wouldn't say it's going to be Cadell. Couldn't say it's going to be Basso. Couldn't say it's going to be Nibali. I mean, what have these guys been doing since the tour?
Is that because of the question mark about the recovery and the training from the tour, or because of the altitude?
I think everything you just said. I think altitude, you could have a guy that trained at sea level after the tour. He's 100% motivated. He came here and altitude just devastated him. Certainly coming from Europe, there is no altitude unless they're training in Tenerife. And I don't think anyone came from Tenerife directly to here. Possibly Yanni. Yanni might have been here training before Colorado. I know he trains in Tenerife all the time, so he's used to altitude. So right now, maybe he's my favorite.
So it's all part of the game.
It's all part of the game.
Keeping it secret, not letting anybody know where you've been or what you've been doing.
I think it's a secret to everybody, including themselves.
Well, we're going to find out soon enough once we start stage one and we get into Denver.
That's why we play the game, right? No, I did get invited. But I arrived here, and originally they told me I was going, and then I arrived here, and they're like, oh, you don't have to go. I think I got here late or something, because I didn't get here till like 1 o'clock yesterday or something.
You know what happened last year at Cali when you didn't go?
Yeah, exactly. That was funny. That was great press.
That was great press.
We loved it.
The other great press was when you said, I think you said, nobody can drop me on a climb.
Yeah.
Except maybe Contador. It's like putting it out there. Boom. All right, we're ready?
I love putting it out there.
You're putting it out there. Here was Chris Horner at the start of the USA Pro Cycling Challenge. And Chris, you've been racing for a long time. You're almost 40, which I'm afraid
turning 41.
Turning 41. If we look back, what was the first pro team in Europe that you rode for?
Française de Jour in Europe, 97, 98, 99.
And then from there you went to?
From there I came back to the States. I did 2 years with Mercury, which of course was doing, they were traveling back and forth. Yeah, they were doing a combo program. We raced in Malaysia, we raced in France, we did Criterium International, a few bigger races over in Europe and stuff. And then of course we raced all the bigger stuff here in the US.
And then after that?
After that, I did a year with, who did I do with?
You were with
Prime Alliance. 1 year with Prime Alliance. 1 year with Saturn. 1 year with Prime Alliance, and then 1 year with Sonia Duval, and then 2 years with Lotto.
And then now with RadioShack-Nissan.
Yeah, which of course is Johann's team from the Stana
So
years.
when you first turned pro with Française de Joux, and compared to how you are now, what?
That's a good one.
What have you done different?
Everything's different now. Diet's different. Training's different.
Do you take the sport more seriously?
Experience is different. I always took it. I take it the same. That's the only thing that probably hasn't changed. I take the sport the same way I did as a kid as I do now. I just try to enjoy it and try not to take it too serious. If you have a good day, you have a good day. If you got a bad day, it was like in California in the time trial stage when I went bad that day. Bad days come, and would I want it to come into Tour of California? No, but after that I got the Tour de France, and before that I had Amstel, Flesch, Liège, Pays Vasco. So I know it's going to come somewhere during the year. Just hopefully it doesn't come
during the key times.
During the key times, which is every race I do. So it's going to come.
That's true. It seems like there's a lot more pressure on you. Have you been comfortable with that kind of, I don't want to say a new role, but I mean you've worked for Lance, you've worked for Contador, you've worked for Cadell, all these different now. You seem to be the man. Have you been comfortable in that new role?
Yes, I'm comfortable in it, and I'm comfortable with having multiple leaders on the team. I think that's a really good way to go. But when I know I'm outright and I just have the really, really good legs, I'm very confident, very comfortable to walk in the meetings and say, guys, I can win today. And I don't have those legs right now at Tour of Colorado. But hopefully...
That's still to be determined.
Yeah, that's still to be determined, and I honestly believe that too. Coming from the Tour, I had good form, and so I honestly think with the altitude training I've already had, been at altitude now 3 weeks, and so hopefully from day 1 or day 2 I start to feel those legs come back. That has even changed in terms of experience of knowing when you have form and when you have it. And so when we go back to the Française de Joux years, I literally think from 97 till now, everything's changed with the exception of the love of the sport and just trying to enjoy it and have a good time.
If you look at how you handled last year, really good form coming into the Tour, you had the crash and bad luck. and now things have gone really well this year. How do you rank this year overall so far compared to maybe the last couple years with fitness, motivation, overall? What kind of grade do you give yourself?
B+, A- or something. I'd like to give myself an A-.
And what would you have given yourself last year?
Last year, I would have given myself a A grade just because I had to win at California. I was second at the Basque Country where Clody went. I was sitting in a really good GC spot at the Tour de France when I crashed out. So I thought that was a solid year. Certainly, I had a lot of Pro Tour points from it and stuff. And you look now, I got a lot of sorry, not Pro Tour, they call them World Tour points now. So I got a lot of points. I've had good, solid results. But the only wins I have are team classifications, and so I got a lot of team classification wins. But of course, every rider wants individual wins, and so I'd like to find a win somewhere between now and the end of the season. And here, of course, at Pro Challenge here in Colorado, this would be a great place to pull one.
What are your plans for next year?
Stay here. Hopefully, the team melts together and gels together and comes together a little bit better. I think the riders are having not a problem there, but we're just trying to get the two teams merging together a little smoother. And I think if that happens, we'll have a fabulous team.
If you take away some of the problems on the team or the management side of that, personally for yourself, everything is still there to continue racing as hard as you can and at the top level?
From what I've seen this year, the legs are still good. The head's always going to want to race. I kind of find it funny when you see guys retire. I'm like, why'd you retire? Really? You got tired of the sport? So certainly my legs are there, and my head's definitely always been there. And you look at the results I've had, says the legs are there. There's never a time when I'm not with the front group, unless of course it's Wiggins or Froome or something at the Tour de France, but I'm in the next group right behind them. So when you look at that, I think the form is there, the fitness is there. Certainly justify my contract and justify me staying in the European level of racing and stuff like that. So for that, I just continue until the legs stop. Maybe the head goes first, but I seriously doubt it.
Yeah. So if you win this year's USA Pro Cycling Challenge, you'll be able to give yourself an A?
Yes, I go to A. If I can pull out any kind of win, I definitely move into the A category.
That's the report card Chris Horner wants, so we're all cheering for him.